Howdy y'all. I'm down at my sawmill. My Woodland mill's HM126 serviced. It's ready to go, gassed up. Got coolant in the tank here. And what I'm doing is putting a straight edge on all of my 2x8s that I had cut. I'm thinking it's right at 4 years, 3.5 years ago probably. And it's time to put the floor in the loft on our cabin, the Airbnb. And what I'm doing, I'm just cutting one edge straight. I used to use a straight edge setup that I had at the shop on the table saw, but this is so much faster. I can do several at a time. It just speeds up the process. I tell you, I really have enjoyed this mill. It's really been a blessing, and I'm not getting anything from Woodland Mills. It's just the fact that this is a good mill, and it's done exactly what I've needed for it to do. And it has saved me so much work and time. And I'm cutting like 5 boards at a time, just putting straight edge on it, just skimming across the edge with the boards clamped in. And that'll give me a good straight edge to use against the table saw fence at the shop after I get these planed. And I'll start making tongue and groove V-edge flooring for the floor in the loft. I'm going to take this second board out. It had the worst crown in it, and I really need to take just a little bit more off of this board right here. The blade didn't quite touch it on the top, so I can take about another 1/8 of an inch out. But I don't want to take any more off of this second one, so I'm going to take it out right now and get it out of the way. That's going to save so much time at the shop. As you can see with this mess, I've started planing the boards for the flooring, and I'm using it's a DC or a Delta DC 380 planer. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up. There we go. This is a 15-inch planer, and it does anything that I need. It's really been handy. I've had this planer for about 30 years, and I've had to hardly do anything to it. It's worked really well. I think there's 25 boards here. I've got them down to 1 9/16 inches. I'll need to make one more pass and make sure that they clean up really well. And I've got the one straight edge that I'll put against the fence on the table saw and get another straight edge. And then I'll do the tongue and groove, and then I'll sand them and put them up. This is a little disappointing. I'm down to 1.5 inches, and this particular board did not clean up. It's got a cup in it this way, and I'm going to have to run them back through. I have to take them a little bit below 1.5 inches to get this to clean up. This one probably would clean up, but this one here, since it is cupped, it's just touching on the outside edge. And so I'll have to take these just a little bit under 1.5 inches. But I've already got the planer set at 1.5 inches, so I'll run them all through and then run them back through again. I've been ripping these boards. These are southern yellow pine that I sawed about 3.5 years ago or so, and they're really good and dry. And I've got them down to the right width of 6.5 inches. and I'll be getting ready to do the tongue and groove on them. When I'm ripping boards here at the shop, I'll make several passes through the table saw, and if the board is say 8 inches wide and need a 6.5 inch piece, I won't rip that 1.5 inches off. I'll take it off both sides, because this yellow pine sometimes will go back and forth on you, and you think you have it straight and then it's got a bow in it. So I take it off of both sides just a little bit at a time. Some people might not want to deal with that, but I'm trying to come up with a straight board. And when I make my last pass, the edge that's against the fence, I'll put a little O on it, and the next to the last pass, I'll make an X. It just helps me keep up with the side that I want to put against the fence on the last cut. I've got about all of my floorboards tongue and grooved, and I'll show you how I'm going about that. I've got a pretty good stack of them here, and I've made a pretty good mess here on the floor. I mean, a big mess, and boy is it fun. I'm using 2 separate routers. One has the tongue bit in it, and the other one is for the groove. Now, these bits are not designed to cut the full depth of the thickness of these boards, but I was able to squeeze on the tongue bit. I was able to get it to where I could actually cut 1 inch and 5/16. 1 1/4 supposedly is the maximum, and of course on the groove you can adjust that for whatever you need. But I'll have a little bit of wood that I'll have to take off with my little skill saw with a guide on it, and I'll show you that when I get to it. But there's a bearing right here in the middle which actually rides on the tongue, what will be the tongue, and there's a bearing here that just rides on the edge of the board, and it cuts a nice groove. These grooves are 7/16 of an inch deep, and the tongue is 7/16 also. When I put these boards up here, I'll always look at them, and if I can detect any bow that might still be left in them, which I've ran them through the table saw several times, so they should be straight, but I always check. And if there is a little bit of a bow, I'll put that bow on this side like this, and I'll cut the tongue on that side, because it's easier to pull a board in from the middle than it is if it was the opposite way. If you had it on your floor like this, it's hard to pull those 2 ends in, but it's easier to pull the middle in. I can block and wedge that in, which I may have to do on some of these to get them good and tight. But I'm going to cut the tongue on this edge here first. And there's one thing I didn't mention, and I feel like I need to. I know you can't see it, but I wrote top right here on the end of this board. That'll be, well, the top. And this side here will be what is seen underneath over the top of the joist. When you're doing tongue and groove, you need to make sure that you run the router on one side, and I'm using the top side for this, and I'll show you why I'm doing that here in a little bit, because of this little bit of wood that's still left right here that the bit I couldn't adjust it to actually cut that. So this tongue itself is not exactly centered in the board, but it's got enough wood from the top edge down to the tongue to hold. So what I'm going to do is just turn this board 180, and I'll keep my router base set on this side of the board, and I'll cut the tongue, or the groove rather, on this side right here. You may have noticed I was going pretty slow with this router that was actually cutting the groove, because this bit here is removing twice as much material as this bit that cuts the groove. So I can actually go a little bit faster with this router as far as pushing it down. Now at this point, all I'm going to do is just lay the board over, just flip it over. And I'll take my little skill saw, and it's set really shallow. Just barely can see the teeth sticking through the plate of the foot there. And all I'm going to do is just remove this little bit of wood right here. If it cuts into this just a little bit, it's not going to matter, because I'm going to come back with a chamfer bit and turn this into V-edge. I'll run the router down this side and this side and make it a V-edge tongue and groove. I've got a guide on here to where I can make sure that I'm just staying exactly where I need to be all the way down through there. This board now is ready to put the V-edge on, which I've got one more of these to do. Then I'll change the bits out, or one bit. So, okay, let's put the chamfers on this. I really like the detail that gives that. It's just sweet. Now let's do a whole bunch of them real quick. What do you say? Last thing I'm doing to these floorboards, I'm giving them a light sanding, and what I'm trying to do is remove any planar ripples that might be in these. For me, I think it's unsightly when you stain a board or put a finish on it and you can still see the planar marks. I like to sand all of that out where it's nice and clean. And what I'm using is a 6-inch random orbital sander, and I've got a 80 grit disc on here. Then I'll come back with a smaller random orbital with a 120 grit disc on it, and that'll clean up any swirls that this one might leave in the wood. So here I go. Okay, I don't see any ripples in that anywhere right now, but that 80 grit leaves it a little bit rougher than I like the feel of it. And so I'll come back over it with a 120 grit sanding disc. I just changed the pad, so it should cut pretty good. I like the way that feels. You may think that that's a lot of work to go through to make this tongue and groove flooring, but there's something about taking a log that you harvested from the tree and you put it on your sawmill and you saw the lumber and you stack it and you air dry it, and then you run it through your planer and you get straight edges on it, and you put your tongue and grooves in there and then sand it. And when you put it up, you get the satisfaction of knowing that you made that from the tree. And it's somewhat therapeutic to do things like that, and I enjoy it. And I'll always be able to look at this and say, I made that from scratch.